All right, so today we get to start 2.3 and we're doing day 1, talking about, we're getting into graphing lines essentially. So linear functions, linear means lines. Okay, so let's just review slope. So remember, positive slopes go up, and on slopes you always read it from left to right like you read a book. So positive slopes go up, therefore negative slopes go down. These two people get mixed around. A zero slope is a horizontal line, and an undefined slope is a vertical line. Okay, now let's talk about the actual formula when they give you two coordinates to find slope. So it is a big division problem actually, and it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm going to talk about how to use it. Let's just get it right into a point. So that's the formula. You need to have that memorized for sure. You're going to have to use it. Okay, so to find the slope through a pair of points, first thing I always do on these problems is I label my points. So it doesn't matter which way you label them, you'll still get the same answer. You just have to be consistent. And what I mean, okay, let's talk about a coordinate. The first coordinate is always your x. So I'm going to call this x1, y1, because the second coordinate is the y1, or the y. The second point I'll call x2, y2. All right, and this problem is going to take a little bit longer because I'm actually going to work it both ways to show you that whenever you flip them around, it does work. So y2, let's go ahead and plug that in. We have a big division problem. y2 goes in the top left, so it's going to be -1 minus, right, your y1, which in this case is 6, over x2, 8, minus your x1, which is 1. Now we just work it out, and you have -1 minus 6 is -7, over 8 minus 1 is 7. -7 divided by 7 is just -1. Okay, let's do it the other way, and I'll call this x2, y2, x1, y1, and I'll show you that you still get the same answer. So we do our y2 first, so 6 minus -1, right, because that's what our y1 is, over x2, which is 1, minus 8. This gives me, so that becomes plus positive, so I have 7 over -7, which also equals -1. Okay, so it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. Whichever way you see it, work it out, you'll get the same answer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start off letter B by labeling x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'll do that every time. So I have my y2, 6, minus my y1, 0, over 4 minus 0. Okay, so 6 minus 0 is 6. 4 minus 0 is 4, and you always check to see if you can reduce. Always check if you can reduce. Can you reduce that one? The answer is yes. If you're not very great, sometimes these numbers get a little crazy. Stick it in your calculator. The Desmos calculator will actually do it for you. If you're not sure, ask me in class, and I'll show you. It just takes a quick second. So whenever you reduce 6 over 4, that becomes 3 over 2. So that is your answer. Some people will be tempted to write that as a mixed number, like 1 and 1/2. Okay, don't ever do that for slope. Always leave it as improper, okay? Because it'll come in handy whenever you actually have to apply it and later. So yeah, you never write it as 1 and 1/2. Okay, let's do a couple more. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So I have 1, y2, minus y1, -3, over x2, minus -1. All right, plus positives, so that becomes 4 over 4, right, which is just 1. Okay, next one, x1, y1, x2, y2. So I have y2 minus 3 minus negative 1, y1 over 8 minus x1 negative 2. Look at all those negatives. Let's change a few of them to positives that we can. So this becomes negative 3 plus 1, would be negative 2. 8 plus 2 would be 10. And this simplifies to be negative, what would that be, 1/5? Okay. And whenever you're writing these, just kind of a afterthought. So you could write it like this, or you could write negative 1 over 5, or 1 over negative 5, depending upon your problem. Just know that you can bring it out front, put it in the top, or put it in the bottom, okay? So just be aware of that. All right, so let's talk about slope-intercept form, which is like my favorite way to graph an equation, so of a line. So it is y equals mx plus b. Okay, so your m, that is always your slope, okay? The number in front of the x is always your slope. And you might remember this from Algebra 1, but if you don't, it's okay. If you remember, the b is your y-intercept, okay? You always write the y-intercept as a coordinate, because it is a coordinate. 0, comma, b, whatever that letter is. And what is a y-intercept? That's where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, sweet. All right, let's move on. So, okay, before we move on, what do you notice about slope-intercept form? The biggest thing about slope-intercept form is the y has to be by itself on one side of the equation. Usually you'll see it on the left, but really you could switch it either way. So the whole goal of whenever you're converting is you have to get the y by itself. Okay, so now let's go to the next section. Write each equation in slope-intercept form, then find the slope and the y-intercept of each line. Okay, so first we need to get the y by itself, so we need to get rid of that 3x. Any idea how to get rid of it? So you need to subtract it since it's a positive. Okay, so those cancel. Can you do 3 minus 3x? And the answer is no, because they're not like terms. So this is going to be y equals, because there's only y left on the left. And then I'm going to write the x first, because that's how slope-intercept form is. So it would be negative 3x, and that's a positive 3, so plus 3. All right, sweet. There's the first answer. We wrote it in slope-intercept form. Good. Now, this part's easy. You did the hard work. So now let's identify what is the slope. Well, that would just be the number in front of the x. So then it would just be 3, negative 3, excuse me. And then the y-intercept, remember you always write it as a coordinate. So it's going to be 0, comma, what's your y-intercept on this one? Well, it'd be positive 3 right there, right? I'll highlight it, kind of help you see it visually a little bit better. Okay, so that's it. That's your answer. A lot of the homework problems are like that. Okay, ooh, this one, we're getting a little crazier. That's okay. Well, first we need to convert it to slope-intercept form, so we have to get the y by itself. So let's get rid of that x and move it over to this other side. So how do you get rid of a negative 4x? Well, you add 4x to both sides. Okay, so now those cancel and we have 2y equals positive 4x plus 7, because that's a positive 7. Right, is the y by itself? The answer is no. So we need to divide. This is where it's a little bit different. So we need to divide by 2 to get the y by itself, right? But whenever you divide one side, you have to do everything on the other side as well. So you have to divide this by 2 and this by 2. Okay? So you have y equals, what is 4x divided by 2? Well, that would be 2x. And then 7 over 2, can you reduce that? The answer is no. So that'd be, if you want to leave it just like that, I am perfectly okay with that. I kind of prefer it actually. Or if you want to put it as a decimal, 3.5, you can. And remember, you can only do that on the y-intercept. If that was the slope, you would definitely leave it, okay? So we've got that part done. Now let's do the slope. What is the slope for this one? Well, it's the number in front of the x, which is 2. And your y-intercept is 0. And remember, don't forget it's a coordinate. 0, 7 over 2. Okay, that's your answer. Let's do another one. Oops, there's a typo. Let's make this a y. My bad. Make that negative 2x a y. All right, so now in order to do this, let's move the x over. Minus 7x minus 7x. That gives me negative 2y. Don't forget there's a negative. Sorry, that was aggressive. I didn't mean it to be, but don't forget it. And then bring down minus 7x plus 8, because 8's positive. Okay, got to get that y by itself, so we have to divide by negative 2. You're dividing everything by negative 2. Be careful, there's a lot of negatives. Those cancel, so we have y equals, what is negative 7x divided by negative 2? Well, those negatives, negative divided by a negative becomes positive, right? And can you do anything with 7 over 2? The answer is no, so you leave it as 7 over 2, or 7 halves, x. And then the last part, positive 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Okay, so that is your answer. Another way, so that's the way I will usually write it. If you see it written like this, just know that it's the same thing. Okay, it's a little less common. I don't usually like to write it that way, but you will sometimes see a textbook do that. So just know those are the same thing. You can put that x out to the side, which is what I prefer, or up in the denominator. They're both equivalent. Okay, so then let's finish this up by finding the slope, which is 7 halves. The y-intercept would be 0, negative 4. Okay. Last one of these. I gave you a fraction, 2 fractions. You'll be all right. This one's not too bad. Okay, we have a few different options of how we can do this. Let's just stick with, I'm going to show you 2 ways, okay? So let's do the way we've been doing by getting the x over there. So I'm going to add 1/2 x, add 1/2 x. Those cancel, so I have negative y equals positive 1/2 x plus 3/4. Is the y by itself? No, it's really close, almost. So, how do you get rid of a negative touching a y? Well, it's negative times y, so you got to divide by negative 1. Oops. Let's write it this way. Okay, so negative y divided by negative 1 is y. 1/2 x divided by negative 1, that just turns it negative. And same with the positive 3/4. When you divide it by negative 1, it just turns it negative. Okay, that is one way to do it. Here's the other way, which I think I do this a few times on the answer key. So I just wanted to explain it. So instead of moving or keeping the y on the left, I'm going to move the y over to the right and move the 3/4 over to the left. So I'm going to get to the y by itself on the right side. You can do this. It's the same thing. Watch what happens. So how would I do that? Well, I would add y to both sides, right? And then I would also, I'm going to do it, I would subtract 3/4 to both sides. So this cancels and this cancels. You're left with y on the right side. And then I'm going to write the x first. Negative 1/2 x minus 3/4, right? Because those are not like terms. Is that the same thing I got over on the left side? Yeah, it is. It's just the y's on the other side. Either way, I mean, technically they're both still in slope-intercept form. This way is probably more common. You might see this, but just know whichever way your brain sees it to go, it doesn't matter. It'll work. All right, last thing we forgot, or I almost forgot, you probably didn't, is to find the slope, which would be -1/2, and the y-intercept would be 0, -3/4. Put that negative there. Alrighty. Okay, so next part, find the slope and the y-intercept of each line. Okay, not too bad. So the slope, what is it whenever there's a horizontal line? Well, that means the slope is 0. So for this, you would put the slope is 0. The y-intercept would be right there, right? That's where it crosses the y-axis. So that would be at 0, 3, right? Yep, each box is worth 1. That's it. Okay, let's do this one. This one's a little bit harder because the slope is a little bit trickier, I think. And remember, slope is always rise over run. You've probably seen that before, hopefully. If you haven't, that's okay. So you always go up and down. That's the numerator number. So let's get the easy thing out of the way, which is the y-intercept. Where does it cross the y-axis? Well, right there. So that would be at 0, -3. And your slope. Okay, this one's a little tricky. I made it difficult on you. What do you notice about this point right there? Well, it's actually, it looks like it's a fraction or a decimal point. It's not a whole number point. So we need to figure out 2 places that it crosses at whole numbers. So for me, it looks like right there, and you could see, I think right there, and you're looking for where it crosses in the corner of a box. So this looks like it rises 2 and it runs 1. And double check, this is a positive slope, it's going up, right? So rise over run, so it'd be 2 over 1, which if you want to leave it like that, it's okay, or you could reduce it to 2. Let's talk about, maybe you didn't quite see that point, and maybe you saw a different point. So let's say you saw this point right here, and then let's go this point, because that also crosses in the boxes. Okay, so this would be up, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 3. So that slope would be, it rises 6, it runs 3, 6 over 3, that reduces to 2. So you still get the same answer, you just have to reduce a little bit bigger numbers. No big deal, you can do it. Use a calculator if you struggle. Okay, last one for this notes. Nice. Okay, so we've got a point at your y. Okay, let's just start it. So our m is whatever. Our y-intercept is my favorite to find because I think it's easier. So that would be at 0. What is that? +3. All right, let's find another point where it crosses in the corner. Looks like right here. Is this slope positive or negative? To me, it's negative. It's going down, right? So I'm going to put a negative sign there so I don't forget. So it goes down 2 over, you count the spaces. People struggle with this sometimes. Over 1, 2, 3, 4, count the spaces. So this would be -2 over 4, which that reduces to -1/2. Okay? That is it for 2.3 day 1. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.